You know, if I were to tell you actually, my craziest adventure of all time, we would be here till tomorrow. Because it was my first time going to Tokyo, Japan. And it was, going to Tokyo is an adventure in and unto itself. But what made it a real adventure was the fact that I only brought $500 because I thought that would be enough for 5 weeks in Tokyo. And so I spent it like in the first 2 days. No exaggeration. This was a long time ago, mind you. $500 went a lot further. I just fell off my lady shoes. I really am wearing lady shoes. Check these out. Woohoo! They're for men, but they look like. So, yeah, I was there, and I went through the $500 in like the first 2 days. And then I just prostituted myself for the rest of the time that I was there. Not literally.
Yes, literally.
Not literally, but I spent the better part of the next 5 weeks as I suppose a Cuban gigolo in Tokyo, which should be a song, but it isn't yet. But no, really, like I met a very, very lovely young lady, and she said, "Can I carry you?" And I said, "No, you can't." And she said, "Well, why come?" And I said, "Because I don't have a phone." And she said, "Why you don't have a phone?" And I said, "Because I don't have anywhere to live." She said, "You can live with me." Right. I had that conversation like 8 times. I'm not kidding. So I was like, "Okay, great." And I moved in, and then things didn't work out so well. So I moved out. And then I met someone else and had that same exact conversation. I moved in with her. And that's how I kind of went through my trip in Japan, my very first trip in Japan. Don't do this, kids. This is how you get syphilis. So, and it ends. I would love nothing more than to tell you the entire story with all the details, because you'd never believe it. You would literally never believe it. But it ends. The story ends with me opening up a closet and finding the first girl that I met in Japan on the floor, curled up in the fecal position. It was Japan. It was the fecal position. Curled up in the fetal position. And I'm like, oh my God, why is the first girl that I've met in Japan dead in my closet? And I poked her a couple times, and it turns out she wasn't dead. And she was hiding her face, and she said, "Don't look at me, I am a monster." And her face had been completely changed. And I'll leave it at that.
Aww.
She no longer had the same face. This is a true story. I do not do drugs. This is a true story. That would probably be, to this day, still like the craziest adventure I ever had. It was a 5-week long. It was the craziest 5 weeks of my entire life, probably. And yet, I don't think it inspired any songs directly, although maybe all women are crazy indirectly. They owe something to that. So, you know, the crazy thing is, I'm not entirely certain that... I told you it was going to take half an hour. No, why are you sorry? You asked a great question. No, if you asked a shitty question, it might have been over quicker. Songs... I think that I probably write more songs when I'm in a lot of pain, and I think that's probably true of a lot of musicians. You write a lot of songs when you're in a lot of pain because you're like desperate for a way to work that out, and more often than not, if you're an artist, you're going to get that out through your art. So, you know, like my first album, my second album, my third album, which was a breakup album. Boohoo's a breakup album. I mean, I would like literally, the first album I was like going back and forth with this woman who eventually became the mother of my child. And there are some pretty intense songs on The Devil's Bris. And then Almost Human, we started to break up, and I was like, ah! And that album, I think, is fantastic, because it's like, there's a lot of pain in that album. And then Boohoo's a breakup album, and it's like, really, you just have to be prepared to sit down and be like, sorry. and then things, I guess, started turning around, and I made Ookie Spooky. And by Ookie Spooky, like, you know, I wasn't really racked with a tremendous amount of pain. I was dating someone, we were very happy together at the time. And subsequently, I was like, what should I make an album about? And Yamero Yaman! Ondurian, I don't know what that means. Ondurian no Metoñanaide, I think, means like, you, I will cut you. It's like samurai slang, really. I saw it in a movie once, just like everybody else here. Where was I? So I made an album. I was like, you know what? I want this album, because also at that point, people were very confused about what I do musically. You know, they would say like, hey, what kind of music do you make? And I go, I don't know. And I want to say like the songs are dark, but they're funny. But then there are the ones that are really sad. And I just could never tell anybody what it was that I did. So when Ookie Spooky rolled around, I was like, I'm going to make an album where I can like come up with one sentence that explains the album. It'll be easier to sell that way. It'll be easier to market that way. So Ookie Spooky is like, has no sad songs. It's an album. It's a funny album. It's an album of up-tempo songs about scary things, like Day of the Dead is on there, and Land of the Dead is on there, and Dead is on there.
Sensing a theme.
Probably other songs with the word dead. And, you know, and it's almost like a mariachi jazz band, you know, playing songs about dead shit. And so that's what that was. But in order for it to not have any sad songs, I had to make an album of all sad songs, and that was Then and Again. And I got that out of the way. Where's this answer going? So, in recent history, you know, I made To the Bottom of the Sea with my first indie album, and it's like a sort of steampunky sea shanty kind of thing, and it's very, very much based in fantasy. And I think this is where I'm going with this answer, is that a lot of those songs are very much based in fantasy, because I wasn't in excruciating pain, so maybe I didn't have a tremendous amount to write about from my own life, or from my own adventures. And so that album is like, and I think it's a beautiful album and well constructed, but it's based mostly in fantasy. And then I made Riding a Black, I'm skipping some maybe, but I made Riding a Black Unicorn, which is also very much based in fantasy, with the exception of a couple songs. And then I made Bitrektual, which is completely based on Star Trek and Star Wars, and what's that other thing? Doctor Who. But the album I'm working on now is called Raised by Bats, and I wrote this album when I was 17. Not all of it, but a lot of the songs I wrote when I was 17, 18, 19. And it's really kind of like the album I always wanted to make, but didn't know how back then. So I guess the answer to your question, now that I've used up half an hour, is that that Tokyo adventure was easily, in my personal life, the craziest 5 weeks of my entire life. It had a lot to do with the fact that there was no telling what would happen next. There really wasn't. I could be homeless, I could have nothing to eat, or I could find myself eating at a 5-star restaurant in Tokyo with a gorgeous woman who was picking up the tab. Like, there was no way of knowing what or, you know, a woman that I was dating could appear a month later in a closet with her face completely changed. So there was so much, and when I say drama, I don't mean it in the bad way. There was so much drama, you know, there was high drama from moment to moment, what could happen. And that hasn't been true in my life in a while. Like, my life has gotten very kind of predictable, honestly, until very, very recently. Now my life is getting I'm becoming more self-destructive so as to make my life more unpredictable, so that maybe I can get back to that place where I used to be, where I wrote songs because life was so extreme. The end. Yes. now. I'm getting paid right now. Go down to your neighbor's place. See the dog's expression on his face. You be doing him a favor if you're wrong to me. He ain't using his brain, he's just watching TV. Cartoon Network trouble. Go down to Mr. McGee's. He hasn't had a thought since 43. His brain is the portrait of atrophy. He ain't using it, why not give it to me? Brains. I won't lie, I'll leave the brains till the zombified. Sure, they might think it's the rain, but they won't give it a thought and turn to being their brains. Brains. It's okay, it's not a matter of goodness and gray. And if at first they think it's strange, they won't think twice if they don't have a brain. You hear that sound of money being made in the background? But anyway, no. People should bug me about stuff that they really want to hear from me, because listen, on a weekly basis, I get requests for songs on a weekly basis. Okay, the difference between that and the phenomenon with the Doctor Who fans wanting me to write a song about Doctor Who is that the questions are, like the requests are so abstract and obscure. Like people will be like, you really need to write a song about Christina Ricci being like a gerbil and and I'm just like, why? Why would I do this? And then once in a while you get people like, you should really make a Stargate song. Never really watched the show. Never really became a fan. You have to make a Firefly song. I should probably sit there. When I have 30 seconds, I'll sit down and watch 30 seconds of the show. But I don't have 30 seconds even. So naturally, I write songs about what I know. I write, and I'm sure you've heard "write what you know." Because the best advice you could ever give anybody, especially if they're a writer, forget songwriting. If they're a writer, is write what you know. Write about what you know. So I write about what I know. But if enough people push, like for instance, any bronies in the house? Any or Pegasus sisters, as the case may be? Okay. Don't be ashamed. We're all friends here.
You wrote their names.
Okay, so I make plush toys. Well, I make toys in general. The most recent one is Candy Claus.
Hey, he's so cute.
Candy Claus is from my children's book called The Legend of Candy Claus. And he's a giant bat, a giant ferocious bat that steals candy from bullies on Halloween and delivers it to good little boys and girls on Christmas. It's a sweet story.
Aww.
And anyway, so this is my most recent toy, and it happens to be a plush toy of Candy Claus. But the one right before this was called Pony of Doom. And Pony of Doom was literally a Pinkie Pie in black. Instead of pink, it was black, and instead of balloons on her flanks, it was a skull. And I took pre-orders, so they were in the process of being made. I made 1,000 of them, and before they even arrived in New York, I had sold 900 of them, primarily to My Little Pony fans. So when there is a demand for something and the demand is big enough, it makes every sense in the world to say, I should be listening to these people. So there's a song that I was in the tub. I take 4-hour baths. That's my hobby, by the way. If you're curious, my hobby is taking 4-hour baths. So I'll grab a bottle of wine or a bottle of rum or whatever, and I'll bring something nice to smoke, like a pipe or some cloves or something, and I'll sit in the tub for 4 hours. And we should get back into why I do this, but I'll do that, and ideas come into my head. And I had this idea one night that I should write a song about discord from My Little Pony. And I was lying in the tub, and the song just started forming in my head. And I just started kind of singing it. And then I was like, get that out of my head, because I really have to focus on this album and getting this album done. But I posted because I lie in the tub with my phone because I'm a pathetic, one of these modern, I'm a fancy modern gentleman with my fucking phone. Like, really, seriously, do you need a fucking phone while you're taking a bath? Probably not. But like checking out Facebook, smoking my cigar, and drinking my port, and checking out Facebook, taking a 4-hour bath. And so I posted something like, I think I may have just written a song about Discord from My Little Pony. And, the bronies lost their shit. They went nuts. And they were like, well, you have to record this. And then, of course, because everyone's just going to go and download it for free, and I'm going to spend a bunch of money to go into the studio and record it, that like real money that I need for shit like paying rent and eating, I said, look, I'll make you a deal. And I said, if you guys order X number of ponies between this date and this date, I'll go in the studio and record that song. And it didn't happen. They didn't. It just, I'm sure they tried, but they. And you can't just go like, all right, I'll do it anyway, because then like nothing matters anymore. It's like giving everybody a medal for no reason. So I didn't record it, and of course I am embroiled in finishing this album, which is why I haven't really given it much thought. But that's a song I'm going to record. I'm going to finish that song, and I'm going to record it because there are so many My Little Pony fans who I think would enjoy it that it would be silly not to. So to answer your question after 27 and a half minutes, people should bug me. People should say, have you ever thought about making a song about this particular fandom because I really enjoy this, and a song from you about this I think would be a great match. And if I get enough requests, then sometimes it happens. I might just start Kickstarters for shit like that. You want a fucking My Little Pony song, kid? Send me $1. Next, first I'm going to check the. But yes.
You obviously make a lot of mistakes. So besides coming to this con, what would you say your worst mistake is?
Okay, so let's back it up. All right, number one, it's probably in bad form to try to point out what you think is amazing about your own show, because that's just plain and simply in bad form. But what a lot of people tell me is that my show is not like going to see your average band, because the average band works really, really hard to recreate the album on stage, right? You want to sound just like the album. You don't want to forget any lyrics. You don't want to forget a chord. You want to be perfect. You want to give people the experience of like, I bought this album, I loved it, and now I'm going to go see Metallica, and they're going to be just like the album. Just to pick a name out of the hat. That's not what my show is like. My show is like, you're visiting an old friend. He drinks a lot. There's no telling what he might do. He's going to sing some songs you're familiar with. Probably won't remember how they go. But you're there and you know how it goes, and you can help out by singing along. So it really is like, it's I think, or at least what I'm told again and again, is that it's a more personal experience. And in fact, I've taken full bands out on tour, where it's like me in front of a full band, and while it's sonically perhaps more interesting, it's a less interesting show. Because I have to sing the song all the way through. I can't stop and be like, hey, what's your name? What is that, a gas mask? And I think, what I personally really enjoy about the shows is the interaction with the audience, not knowing what happens next. Presuming it's all going to work out, but not knowing how it's going to work out. And the little things that happen. Like, mistakes are the best part of my show. Because when a mistake happens, whether I make it, or whether something happens in the audience, or something falls over, when something unpredictable like that happens, it's like instant material. Because now we can talk about this thing that we've all witnessed. We've shared together. So, I do make lots of mistakes. None of them are drunken mistakes. I can't remember the last time I can. I've only been so drunk that I couldn't actually do my job on stage twice in my career. And both times I got emails that, first of all, let me tell you, I gave the promoter their money back. New Orleans was one of them. I got so drunk in New Orleans because I forgot I had 2 shows. I've never had 2 shows in a night. And so I did this one show, and I did it the way I normally do it. I'm like, drinking a bottle of rum, like blah, 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 talking to the audience. It was an industry thing, so afterwards, like, people from the distributor, back when I had one, were buying me drinks at the bar after the show. And then, like, the president of the record label tapped me on the shoulder. He was like, "You got to go to the Hi-Ho Lounge for your other show." And I was like, "What?" I was wasted. And I went to this other club, and I walked in, and I was so embarrassed at how drunk I was that I was wearing my top hat covering my face. And I sat there. I mean, I could barely stand. I was standing there like, and I don't want to be that guy. Like, clearly, I'm fond of rum. And rum is rather fond of me. But I don't want to be that guy who's like this, like, who wants to be that guy? So I walk into this place, and I was that guy. And I was like, oh my God, I'm wasted. I have to do a 1-hour show. There's 200 people here, all of whom have bought tickets to see this show. And I don't really know if I can. And I walked out on stage, and I started to play a song, and it was like, I think I opened with Zombie Prostitute. And Zombie Prostitute goes something like... So I walked out, I'm like, New Orleans, how are you? Oh, all right, yeah, okay. And then I start the song, and I went... And then I realized I have no fucking clue how this song goes. And so I moved on to the next song. I was like, let me do Brains. And I was like, it's not the right chord. And so I tried to play Brains, and I couldn't remember how that went. And now the panic begins, right? Like, I'm actually starting to panic. Like, oh my God, I'm standing on stage and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I went to a third song. I tried to play a third song. And that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember was that, these people were really nice, and they used to make this giant pot of jambalaya for anybody who performed there that evening. And it was amazing. Best jambalaya I've ever had. And so I just remember I'm sitting backstage and I'm eating jambalaya. Like, literally my next memory. I don't fucking black out, but I blacked out. And I'm just sitting there eating jambalaya, and I'm like, jambalaya good. This doesn't taste like failure. And I start hearing my name being chanted. You're like, Voltaire, Voltaire, Voltaire. And I'm like... And I thought, oh my God, I walked off stage! Like, I tried to play 3 songs, couldn't remember how they went, and I must have walked off stage and gone backstage, and I'm eating jambalaya. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. So I grabbed my guitar and I went back out there, and the sheer adrenaline rush of being that terrified sobered me up. I literally was just bling, and I played some songs. And so afterwards I went up to the promoter and I said, thank you very much for booking me. Here's all of your money back. And they were like, are you crazy? I said, I really don't think that I performed to the best of my abilities. I don't think that, you hired me to do a job, and I don't believe I've done that job. I can't take your money. Katrina had happened 6 months earlier. I was like, take this money. The club needs work. The neighborhood needs work. Just put it towards your efforts to fix the damage from Katrina. And they said, thank you very much. And I went home. And, well, that's kind. And the next day, I checked my email, and everybody was like, awesome song! Awesome show! yo, Zombie Prostitute was fantastic. Brains was amazing. And apparently, during that period where I blacked out, I had not walked off stage. I just done my entire show. And I was backstage eating my richly deserved jambalaya. But I heard them calling my name. I had no recollection that I'd performed. So I went back out and I think I did the show again. But I actually did the entire show completely wasted. So the mistakes are not drunken mistakes. They're just mistakes. And as for my mistake for coming here, wow, you couldn't be more wrong. What a lovely group of people. Great show last night. I mean, honestly, when I talk that much between songs, it's because I'm having so much fun. So I had a really, really great time, and I'm so glad to see you all here, and I'm glad you came.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you. I would come back to Anime Syracuse in a heartbeat, and maybe then I'll have a song about My Little Pony. And also, something you guys don't know is I once started writing a song about Death Book. I spent so much time on Facebook that I think everything ends with the word book. No, but I honestly, I started writing a song about Death Note. This is how long ago it's been. And it's all written, it's like, and this is a weird twist, because I never do it this way. I've written the lyrics, but not the melody. So I have to write the rest of the song. But every verse is how I'd like to die, a preposterous way to die, and then the chorus is like, you know, it's in her death note, that's all that she wrote. It's pretty up-tempo. But it's like, you know, just to paraphrase, like the first verse is something like, it's the year 2099. Okay, because that's when I want to die. In the year 2099. It's like, it's the year 2099. I'm out by my Olympic-sized swimming pool, smoking a Cuban cigar, drinking a bottle of the finest Cuban rum. I'm at this point, I'd have to be how old? Like 100 and something, like 200 years old. And then suddenly the skies open up and something like 30 naked anime girls with wearing nothing but kitty ears and kitten tails fall out of the sky and crush me to death with their breasts. That's what all the verses are like. And there was a third question. It was, you make a lot of drunken mistakes. Oh, what was the biggest mistake of your life?
Yes.
I don't believe I've made it yet. I've made many, but I don't believe I've made it yet. No, that's not true. Oh my God. I know the biggest mistake of my entire life. I really do. Can you fucking believe it? I mean, how old are you?
14.
14? You're 14? Jesus Christ. You know what the biggest mistake of your parents' life was? Giving you steroids. Your mom was ODing on steroids when she breastfed you. The biggest mistake of my entire life. Oh my God. I'm probably over time at this point. We have 2 minutes. This story's going to take probably half an hour. I'm going to make it short. I went on a date with Bjork. Yeah. And I recently, actually, I was doing a show. I shouldn't call it a date, but I call it a date. I call it a date. I like to call it a date. I'm sure she has no recollection it ever even happened. But I like to call it a date. It was many, many, many years ago, and I was a huge fan of the Sugar Cubes, which was the band that she was in. In fact, when I saw the Sugar Cubes for the very first time, I fell madly in love with Bjork. I just went, oh my God, I am madly in love with that woman. Now, of course, that's not real. You know, that's not real. You can't look at a TV or hear someone on the radio and decide you're in love with someone, because you don't know who they are as a person. But, you know, I had that kind of weird crush thing that people do. And I fell madly in love with her. And her voice is so amazing. She was so beautiful. Just everything about her. I was madly in love with her. And one day, a friend of mine the lead singer of a band called the Psychedelic Furs, a gentleman by the name of Richard Butler, called me up and he said, "Volty, do you want to go see a concert tonight?" And I said, "Well, it depends. Who's playing?" He goes, "Some band called the Sugar Cubes." I was like, "Oh my fucking God! Are you kidding me?" And so I was like, "Ah!" And I went. And I remember, I wanted to make an impression. I don't know that I consciously thought I'd ever actually see Bjork personally, but I wanted to make an impression. So I was wearing like my stretch black vinyl pants, like skin-tight black vinyl pants, which I stopped wearing once I realized that I had gotten a little older and a little chubbier, and they made me look like a Puerto Rican stripper. But back then, I still looked good in them. And I was wearing like high, pointy boots. My hair was long back then, which is weird because I'm having a midlife crisis. And I look more like I used to back then. And we go to this concert, and, because he's a very, very well-known singer, of course, we had some kind of weird, like, VIP passes of some sort. We sat up in this mezzanine, and I sat up there looking down upon this beautiful angel as she sang her songs with her band. And there was a song on the album called Hit, which was, not so ironically, their hit. And at some point she announces to the audience, she says, my friends were going to come and they were going to dance on stage when I played my song Hit, but they did not come. And the whole audience was like, oh. She's like, so I guess we should probably do it because the song's almost over. Now she's Russian suddenly. So they play Hit, and the song's over, and a couple minutes goes by, and she goes, my friends are here. Do you mind if we play Hit again? And everybody's like, no, awesome, go for it. So then all of these club kids get up on stage, and they're like, guys with 3 chunks of hair sticking out of their head, like, 3 green spikes and like 5-foot-tall platform boots. I mean, it really looked like the circus had come to town, which I love, I mean, look at me. I look like a gay Jack the Ripper. So like all these like crazy club kids get up onto the stage and they're dancing around, and I am just standing up there thinking she has the voice of an angel. She's so beautiful. My heart is bursting in my chest, like any fan. Honestly, that's really what that is, just being a big fan. And the show's over. They get off the stage, and I get up and I'm walking on a cloud, and I'm walking out the door, and Richard grabs me by the back of my coat. He's like, where are you going? Don't you want to go backstage? And I'm like, what? So we go backstage. And there's a little buffet back there. I see Bjork, and she's surrounded by her club kid friends. And she looked like a small planetoid with its own gravitational pull. She just had like literally people standing like shoulder to shoulder all the way around her, like a tiny Saturn. And I was standing with Richard and Einar was the guy who played trumpet and screamed a lot. So like if Bjork went, sick for toys, oh, sick for toys, you go, sick for toys! A lot of screaming, that man. He was a musical anarchist. And he played trumpet. And so Richard and Einar and I can't help but to be constantly kind of looking over. And at some point, Bjork manages to break her own gravitational pull, and she goes across the room to get something to eat from this little buffet. And I'm like, this is my chance. Because I like to think of myself as a cunning linguist, a smooth talker, and a great conversationalist. And I'm going to be able to go over there and sweep her off her feet. So I walk over, and I pick up like a Triscuit or something, put it in the dip, I'm eating it, and I look over and I notice she's wearing a white vinyl dress. And I said, oh, is that vinyl? Yeah, my pants are vinyl, I'm a big fan. And she looks at me and she says something like, this is how I recall it, I have a kitty. Now, I'm on a mission and I'm not going to be deterred. I'm not going to let I have a kitty get in the way of the plan. So I'm just like instantly trying to roll with that, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. What's your cat's name? And she looks up at me and she says, in Iceland, I like to lay down on the grass and look at the stars. And I was like, and then she just fucking spun on a heel and darted off. I was like, God! And I stand there over the cut carrots and celery. I'm like, what just happened? What just fucking happened? And so, I'm demoralized, and I kind of schlep back over to Richard and Anar, and I'm standing there like, what the fuck just happened? I've been Bjork. So we're talking, and Richard's like, I'm kind of tired. I think I'm gonna go home. Blah blah blah. And I was like, no, we must go out. We must go out and have a great time. And I may have been responsible for saying something like, we should all go to the Limelight, like a little too loudly. And the Limelight was this cathedral that had been converted into a nightclub. And everybody's like, yeah, Limelight. So then the band says something along the lines of, how are we all going to get into this Limelight, like on Saturday night? I said, I'll take care of that. And they're like, really? I'm like, really? Maybe. So we get a couple cabs, right? And it's Richard and Anar and I in one cab, and Bjork and her 12 club kid friends in another cab. And we ride up to the front of the Limelight, and I get out of the cab, and I start walking right up to the front, and I see the doorman who I don't believe I played a musical show yet. I don't believe I was technically even a musician yet. But I knew him from the club scene, and I walk up the steps, and I look at him, I said, Neville, I have like 38 people with me. And he's like, what the fuck? I said, it's Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs, and it's the Sugar Cubes, and it's a bunch of other people. And he was like, all right. So they start getting out of the cab. All right, so now Bjork's cab pulls up, and she gets out, and then, dude, it's like, literally. Like, a guy with a fishbowl for a head, and like, the dude with like the green crazy tufts of hair, and everybody's just like, it's like a scene out of Yellow Submarine. It's completely fucking psychedelic. And Neville says to me, let me get you some drink tickets. I was like, sure. He comes back. I have never in my entire life seen anything like this. He handed me, God, I wish I had something to show you, handed me a stack of drink tickets that was that thick. Like they're the size of business cards, and each one was good for a free drink. And he had to have given me like 250 of them. And I was like, all right. We all go in. And, once like Richard and Anar and I get settled at the bar. Now, you have to understand something. This is a fairly new hobby for me. Back when this story took place, I drank Diet Coke when I went to nightclubs. I didn't drink alcohol.
Right down now.
2 drinks and I'd be done. Really. I'd be like on the floor. So we get to the bar and I have all these drink tickets, and I said, hey, can I get you guys drinks? And Richard didn't drink either, so like he got a Coke, and Anar was like, vodka. We have to drink vodka. And I was like, I'm going to get a Diet Coke. He's like, no, you must drink vodka. I was like, okay. So we both get vodkas. And like, Richard's drinking his Diet Coke, or his Coke, and we do these shots. And I swear to God, it was like, he drank his and was like, another one. Another couple drink tickets. So I probably have 3 shots of vodka, which is the most alcohol I've had to drink in the previous 10 years. And while that's happening, I walk over to Planet Bjork with its multicolored rings. And I'm like trying to poke my head in, and I'm like, hey, and I finally get Bjork's attention. I said, would you like a drink? And she says, I have a kitty. I'm like, I know. Would you like a drink? And she looks at me and she says, can you get me drugs? And I was like, I don't do drugs. I don't even drink. And I was like, oh, and I look around and there's this one guy in like a jogging suit. Like everybody else looks like they're ready for their mission to Mars. And he's wearing like a jogging suit. I was like, my guess is that guy over there is probably your best bet. And so, you know, of course, the second all of our friends heard drink tickets, I was, you know, besieged with requests for drinks. And I was like, yeah, here you go. Everybody gets a drink. Here, have two. I go back to the bar. We must drink. I'm like, oh my God. We do like another 3 shots of vodka. At this point, Richard's like, all right, I'm kind of tired. I'm going home. I was like, okay. So he leaves. And Einar looks at me and he's like, don't leave me. I said, okay, I won't leave you. We must drink. Okay. We have another couple shots. I go back over to ask Bjork if she'd like another drink. And she has moved on to somewhere else in the club. And 2 of these club kids were standing there having a conversation that I overheard. And they said, they were saying to a third person, oh my God, were you at the show? You should have been there. It was amazing. Like, we got up on stage and we were dancing, and like no one even gave a fuck about Bjork. Like, no one was even looking at her. They were all looking at us. And we were like dancing around, and everybody was like, oh my God, those people are so fabulous. And like, no one even fucking cared about her. It was fucking awesome. And I wanted to fucking die. I wanted to die. I didn't know her. I had no idea who I didn't know her as a person. We were not friends. I don't know if we were ever even properly introduced. But I wanted to die, like as a fan, to see other people who were like in the inner sanctum, like openly using someone. And my soul was crushed. I should also point out that I'm 9 shots of vodka in. And at the time I didn't drink. So I'm just like, oh my God. So I like disheartenedly crawl back to the bar. And Einar's like, we must drink. And I'm like, can you get me drugs? I'm like, oh, fuck. The African-American guy in the sweatsuit. So he goes off to do drugs. He eventually comes back. I'm so depressed at this point. But I'm thinking, like, I have to keep it together, really. And so I say, I have an idea. Why don't we go to the Palladium? And the Palladium was also a nightclub that was a stadium turned into a nightclub. So it's just this enormous place. It's like Madison Square Garden turned into a disco, basically. And he's like, oh, I will tell Bjork. And he goes and he tells Bjork, and the next thing I know, we're all going to Palladium. So we all, actually it's just Einar and I get in a cab. And, Bjork and 3 million other people get into a caravan cab. And we're driving to the Palladium, and I want to remind you, I was not a musician at this time. I was a stop-motion animator. I directed station IDs for MTV and Sci-Fi Channel. I was slowly starting to get into like music videos and stuff like that. And I thought, my dream in the entire world at that moment would have been to make a music video for the Sugar Cubes. And so I said to Einar while I was in the cab, I was like, here's my business card. I would really, really love to show you my work, and I'd love to make a music video for the Sugar Cubes. And he took my card, he looked at it, he put it in his pocket, and he said, where are we going? I said, it's called Palladium, it's a big nightclub. He's like, okay. We get there, we get out. I walk up to, I'm getting old, I can't remember the name of the door person at the Palladium. It'll come to me later. Sally Randall, holy shit. I walk up to Sally Randall, I'm like, Sally, I'm here with like 40 people. She's like, what? I'm like, it's the Sugar Cubes and all their friends. She's like, oh, okay. So we all walk in, of course, Bjork's caravan pulls up. Now, the best thing about the Palladium was that the VIP room was the old skybox of the stadium. And there was no elevator. So you literally had to walk to the very, very top of the bleachers. Like, try to picture going to a stadium and walking to the very top of the bleachers. So it's all the way up to the top of the Michael Todd room, which, of course, it starts getting slower. For those in front of me. Not really my thing. So we get up to the VIP room. It's called the Michael Todd room, and it was just like this very very long room. And Einar pulls me aside, and he says, "Don't leave me." And I said, "Yeah, you told me that before." And he says, "You must not leave me." I was like, "I'm not going to leave you. I'm not really sure what it means, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to leave you." So it's at this point, after a couple more drinks, that I realize that I'm what they call blind drunk. Like blind, like I can barely stand. I can barely stand. And I think to myself as I'm standing there with Einar at the bar, and I'm like, and I look over, and I see Bjork is dancing on the dance floor. And I think to myself, this is my last chance. This is really my last chance. I'm a huge fan. I love her to death. I want to meet her. I want to talk to her. And I want her to like me. Thank you, Obama. And I'm going to go dance with her. Actually, it was worse than that. Because I was very young. And I think I thought to myself, I'm going to go out on the dance floor and just bust out some of my finest moves, and she'll clearly just want to dance with me. I'm not going to go be creepy and be like, "Yo, what's up?" "Oh, baby, don't hurt me." Was that terrifying? I apologize.
You made her night.
You made my day.
That's all right. Pick the autistic girl to rub on. That's my go-to. So I honestly, drunkenly think to myself, I'm just going to go position myself somewhere near her, and I'm going to look so good on that dance floor doing my finest moves that she will wish to dance with me. And I go out there, and I'm like, like I stumble out there, and I'm standing on the dance floor, and I'm dancing. And I look across the room, and this was a long, huge room. But I see Bjork in her white vinyl dress, and she's dancing with these crazy club kids. And she suddenly turns and looks directly at me, literally, from across the room. She just turned and looked directly at me. And I stopped dancing, and I froze. And then she just started running as fast as she could across this dance floor. And I'm shocked. And she's running directly towards me. Now, I don't remember if this room was like the length of a football field or whether it just felt that way. But I felt like she was running for 10 minutes. And then she finally got right up in front of me. And she dropped to her knees, and she pulled up my sweater. I was wearing an NYPD sweater. And she stuck her tongue in my belly button. And I'm standing there. Bjork's got her tongue in my belly button.
Violated.
And she gets up, and she smiles, and I imagine her saying, "I have a kitty," though she probably didn't. And she like just spun on a heel and tore off. And like half a second went by, and I was so confused. And I just went into a rage, and I was like, "That's it! That does it! I quit! I don't understand this person! What the fuck was that? Like, I don't know what to do with this." And I was so angry that I stormed out of the room. Now, I want to picture a guy who does not drink. I was 180 pounds at the time. I'm 6'1". I was 180 pounds. I didn't drink. I stormed out of the room drunkenly, opened the door, and somehow managed to actually walk down the bleachers without face planting and rolling down the stairs. And that's honestly when I learned the meaning of the words blind drunk. Because I did not just go home. I felt my way home. I literally felt my way home. I was like, this This must be First Avenue. I crawled home. And I got up to my apartment, and I opened the door, and I slammed the door behind me. I am not a door slammer. I am not a dish breaker. I generally don't even raise my voice. I don't like to come to that. I walked into my apartment. I was in such a rage that I destroyed all my Sugar Cubes cassettes. I just broke them in half, and I tore out all the tape, and I threw them on the ground and just jumped up and down on them. I was so fucking angry. But this is the woman who eventually became the mother of my child. And she knew me very well, and she knew that I was going to see the Sugar Cubes. And she had keys to my apartment. She was like, I'm going to see what this motherfucker's up to. Because he's probably banging Bjork in there right now. And I can't even begin to tell you how thrilled I am that she had so much confidence in me. She opens up the door, and there I am, spread out like a swastika on my back. And she has this wry smile on her face, and she goes, guess Bjork didn't fall in love with you, huh? I was like, fuck you. So I guess she eventually left, when she could leave knowing that I wasn't having sex with Bjork. And she left, and I woke up the next morning, and I was really sad. And, this, honestly, the moral of this story is it's very, very dangerous to have expectations of, people you don't even know, you've never met, right?